The desert night was quiet. Too quiet. Captain Marcus Hayes stood outside the small outpost, looking at the stars above. He had been a soldier for 12 years, but tonight felt different. The air was heavy, and even the wind seemed afraid to blow. Marcus was the commander of the 301st Regiment of black soldiers sent to the most dangerous jobs in the war. They were proud, tough, and loyal, but they knew the truth. To the higher officers back in Washington, they were expendable. If something went wrong, nobody would remember their names. Inside the command tent, the radio crackled. Sergeant Willis rushed in. "Captain," Willis said, out of breath, "we just got a signal. Alien landing ship coming down less than 50 miles from here." Marcus straightened. "You sure?" "Yes, sir. The scanners picked it up 5 minutes ago. It's big. Real big." Marcus walked over to the table where the holographic map was glowing. The red dot on the screen pulsed like a heartbeat. He frowned. "Call HQ," Marcus ordered. "Let's see what command wants us to do." Minutes later, the answer came back. The voice of the general was cold and flat. 301 ST, you are ordered to hold position. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. Observe and report until reinforcements arrive. Marcus clenched his jaw. Reinforcements? Out here, in the desert? That could take hours. After the call ended, Willis gave Marcus a worried look. "Sir, if they're building something out there, we may not have hours." Marcus nodded slowly. He turned back to the hologram and saw something strange, a massive energy spike near the landing site. It was off the charts, brighter than anything he had seen before. "This isn't just a supply drop," Marcus said. "They're bringing a weapon." Private James Carter, the youngest man in the regiment, was sitting nearby cleaning his rifle. He looked up nervously. "What kind of weapon?" he asked. Marcus didn't answer right away. He was thinking. If the energy spike was as strong as it looked, it could level an entire city. Maybe two. He stepped outside the tent. The sky in the distance was glowing faintly. The alien ship must have already landed. Marcus had a choice. He could wait for orders, sit in the outpost, and hope reinforcements came in time. Or he could take his men out there right now and try to stop whatever the aliens were building. If he waited, millions could die. Marcus turned back to his men. His voice was calm but firm. "Get the trucks ready. We move out in 10 minutes." The camp came alive with noise. Soldiers grabbed rifles, loaded magazines, and checked their gear. The sound of engines starting filled the night. Private Carter hesitated by the truck. "Sir, HQ said we're not supposed to move," he said quietly. Marcus looked him straight in the eye. "Son, if we wait, there won't be anyone left for HQ to protect. We move now." Carter swallowed hard, then nodded and climbed into the truck. Soon the convoy was rolling out across the dark desert. The headlights cut through the sand and dust. Nobody spoke. The silence was worse than shouting. As they got closer, the men could see lights in the distance, bright, alien blue, shining against the black sky. "Sir," Willis said, "I think they've already started building something." Marcus gripped the wheel tighter. "Then we're already late." The convoy stopped just over a ridge. The soldiers got out quietly and crawled to the top. What they saw made their blood run cold. Below them, in a flat clearing, the KLYTH had set up a massive machine. It was taller than a building, glowing with strange energy. Dozens of aliens were working around it, moving fast, like they knew time was short. Carter whispered, "It looks like a bomb." Marcus didn't answer. He just watched, his heart beating faster. Suddenly, the machine let out a low hum, and the ground shook. A wave of blue light swept over the desert. Marcus pulled back and turned to his men. We don't have time to wait for anyone. If we let them finish, this whole region is gone. The men nodded. They knew what had to be done. Marcus stood tall, silhouetted against the glowing sky. "All right, boys," he said, his voice steady, "we hit them hard and fast. We take out that machine, no matter the cost." The soldiers checked their weapons one last time. The desert was silent again, as if it was holding its breath. Marcus raised his hand. "Move out." The screen cuts to black. The sound of boots crunching on sand echoes as the regiment disappears into the night. The desert wind howled as the 301st moved toward the alien site. The trucks were left behind. From here, they went on foot. Every step crunched on the dry sand, but the soldiers stayed silent. They were shadows in the night. Captain Marcus Hayes led from the front. His heart was pounding, but his mind was clear. There was no turning back now. "Sergeant Willis," Marcus whispered, "take the left flank. Carter, stay on my right. We'll circle around and hit them from two sides." The men nodded. They had done this before, but never against an enemy like this. From their position, they could see the KLYTH clearly now. The aliens were tall and armored, their skin glowing faintly under the moonlight. Strange tools clicked and hissed in their hands as they worked on the massive machine. Private Carter's mouth was dry. He had never seen the KLYTH up close before. Their faces were expressionless, cold, almost mechanical. He gripped his rifle tighter. Marcus raised his hand, signaling the attack. For a brief moment, the night was perfectly still. Then he gave the order. "Go." Gunfire erupted. The soldiers opened up with everything they had: rifles, machine guns, even the one rocket launcher they carried. Bullets tore through the camp, sparks flying as alien metal shattered. The KLYTH reacted fast. Bright energy blasts cut through the night, turning sand into glass where they struck. One soldier went down screaming, hit in the chest. "Keep moving," Marcus shouted. The regiment pushed forward, taking cover behind rocks and fallen alien crates. Carter fired until his rifle clicked empty, then reloaded with shaking hands. He could feel his fear turning into anger. This was their land, their fight. No alien was going to build a weapon here and destroy millions of lives. Sergeant Willis lobbed a grenade toward the machine. It exploded in a flash of fire, ripping open one of the glowing power conduits. Sparks shot into the air, and the machine let out a loud, mechanical scream. "We got it!" Willis yelled. But they hadn't. The machine was still running slower now, but still alive. More KLYTH poured out of the landing ship, their weapons glowing bright. The firefight turned into chaos. Soldiers yelled orders over the roar of guns. The air smelled like burning metal and ozone. Carter dropped to the ground as a blast went over his head. His ears rang. He could see Marcus standing tall, firing calmly, shouting to keep his men steady. "Push forward," Marcus yelled. "Take the core." The soldiers surged toward the machine, fighting hand to hand now. The clash was brutal: fists against claws, rifle butts against alien armor. Carter stabbed one of the KLYTH with his bayonet, his hands shaking but his strike deadly. Finally, they reached the base of the machine. Willis planted the last of their explosives against one of the main supports. "Fire in the hole," he yelled, pulling the detonator. The blast rocked the desert, and part of the machine collapsed, sending alien workers scrambling. The glow dimmed, the hum grew weaker. The soldiers cheered for a split second, but then the ground shook again. From the open hatch of the ship, something stepped out. It was massive, almost twice the size of a human, its armor covered in glowing marks. Its eyes burned like hot coals. It carried a blade made of pure energy. The KLYTH warlord had arrived. The soldiers fell silent. The warlord surveyed the battlefield, its gaze cold and calculating. Then it spoke in perfect English. "You should not have come here," it said, its voice deep and terrible. "Leave now, and I will spare a few of you." Nobody moved. Marcus stepped forward, his rifle still in his hands. "This is our world," Marcus said. "We're not leaving." The warlord tilted its head, almost like it was amused. Then it roared and charged. The soldiers opened fire, but the warlord moved with impossible speed, deflecting bullets with its blade. It closed the distance in seconds. Marcus barely rolled aside as the energy blade sliced into the ground where he had been standing. The sand turned to glass. "Fall back!" Marcus yelled. "Fall back to the ridge." The men scrambled to pull their wounded out as the warlord advanced. Its blade glowed brighter, its armor shining like fire. Carter fired his last rounds, buying time for the others. Marcus grabbed him by the collar and dragged him back. They made it to the ridge, breathing hard, the warlord standing below like a dark god, watching them. Marcus clenched his fists. This wasn't over. "Cliffhanger," the warlord raised its blade and pointed it at Marcus. "Tomorrow night," it said. "One fight. You and me. Winner keeps this land. Loser dies." The soldiers looked at Marcus, waiting for his answer. Marcus stared back at the alien and nodded once. "I'll be there." The screen fades to black. The night after the battle was silent. The 301st had retreated to an abandoned shack miles from the landing site. The men were exhausted, some wounded, some barely standing. They had stopped the aliens from finishing the weapon for now, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the KLYTH tried again. Captain Marcus Hayes sat apart from the others, sharpening his combat knife. The firelight reflected in his tired eyes. "You don't have to do this, sir," Sergeant Willis said quietly, sitting down next to him. "We can hit them again with the whole regiment. All of us together." Marcus shook his head slowly. "If we fight them all head on, we'll be wiped out. You saw that thing. It tore through half our ammo like it was nothing. This is the only chance we've got." Private Carter, still bandaged from the last fight, stepped closer. "But sir, what if you lose?" Marcus looked at him. His face was calm, but there was steel in his voice. "Then you finish the job. You blow that machine sky high, no matter what it takes." The camp went quiet. Everyone knew what he meant. The next night, the desert sky was cloudless, the stars shining like cold fire. Marcus walked toward the alien camp alone. His rifle stayed slung across his back. Tonight was not a night for guns. The KLYTH were waiting. Hundreds of glowing eyes watched from the shadows as Marcus entered the clearing. The massive machine still stood, humming faintly, half repaired since last night's attack. And there, in the center, stood the warlord. It was even bigger up close, its armor glowing with strange runes. The energy blade it carried buzzed with deadly power. "You came," the warlord said, its voice rumbling like thunder. "I said I would," Marcus replied. The warlord gestured with its blade. "This fight will end with one death. Are you ready, human?" Marcus drew his combat knife, the steel glinting in the moonlight. "I was born ready." The aliens formed a circle around them. Not one made a sound. The fight began in a flash. The warlord struck first, its blade cutting through the air like lightning. Marcus dove aside, rolling to his feet and slashing with his knife. The blade scraped across the warlord's armor, leaving only a shallow mark. The warlord laughed a cold, inhuman sound and swung again. Marcus barely blocked with his knife, the impact jolting his arm. He could feel the heat from the glowing weapon. He had to move fast, stay light on his feet. He darted around the warlord, striking at weak points, the joints, the gaps in the armor. Sparks flew, but the warlord kept coming, each swing heavier than the last. Marcus's lungs burned. Sweat ran into his eyes. But he didn't back down. "You fight well," the warlord said, breathing hard. "But you cannot win." Marcus grinned despite the blood on his lip. "I don't need to win easy. I just need to win once." He feinted left, then rolled right, driving the knife deep into the warlord's side. The alien roared, spinning and knocking Marcus to the ground with the back of its armored hand. Marcus hit the sand hard, the wind knocked out of him. The warlord loomed over him, blade raised for the killing strike. At the last second, Marcus grabbed a handful of sand and flung it into the warlord's glowing eyes. The alien stumbled back, blinded for a moment. Marcus surged forward, tackling the warlord to the ground. They wrestled in the sand, man and alien locked in a deadly struggle. Marcus grabbed the warlord's own blade arm, forcing it upward as the weapon buzzed inches from his face. With a final shout, Marcus twisted the warlord's wrist and drove his knife into its chest straight through the glowing heart plate. The warlord went still. Slowly, Marcus stood, breathing hard, his knife dripping with alien blood. Around them, the other Klyth fell silent. The warlord's final words echoed in the night. "You are worthy." Then its hand reached toward the machine and slammed a glowing control panel. The machine began to scream, its core powering up. Marcus stumbled back, realizing what had just happened. The warlord had activated the weapon's countdown. "No!" Marcus shouted, but it was too late. The core glowed brighter and brighter, the desert rumbling under their feet. Up on the ridge, the 301st watched in horror. Sergeant Willis shouted, "We've got minutes before that thing blows." Marcus grabbed his radio. "Fall back," he barked. "Get everyone out of the blast zone." But Private Carter's voice came back, steady and calm. "No, sir. We're not running. I think I can stop it." Marcus froze. Carter was already sprinting down the ridge toward the machine. Cliffhanger, the camera follows Carter as he disappears into the glowing light, the sound of the machine growing louder. The screen cuts to black. The desert glowed like a second sun. The alien machine's core pulsed brighter and brighter, each flash lighting the 301st's faces like a strobe. The ground shook under their boots, and a low hum grew into a deafening roar. Private James Carter ran toward the device, his legs burning. He could hear Marcus shouting behind him, but he didn't stop. If he didn't shut this thing down, the whole region would be turned into glass. "Cover him," Marcus ordered, raising his rifle and firing at the last of the alien defenders. The 301st sprang into action. Bullets tore through the night, cutting down Klyth soldiers trying to stop Carter. The regiment fought like demons, buying him every second they could. Carter reached the base of the machine. The alien controls glowed with shifting symbols, none of which he could read. His hands shook as he touched the panel. "Think, James, think," he muttered. Then he remembered. Weeks ago, during training, he had listened to intercepted Klyth transmissions. Their language had patterns, rhythms like music. He closed his eyes, hearing the sounds in his head, matching them to the symbols before him. Behind him, explosions shook the sand. The warlord's soldiers were throwing everything they had at the 301st. Marcus crouched behind a rock, firing until his rifle clicked empty, then switching to his sidearm. "We can't hold much longer," Willis yelled. "Just hold," Marcus shouted back. "Give Carter time." Carter pressed a sequence of glowing symbols. The core's hum changed pitch, going higher, faster. For a moment, he thought he had done something wrong. Then a new symbol appeared, one he recognized. It meant safe or still. He pressed it. The machine's glow flickered. The countdown slowed. But it wasn't enough, the core was still charging. He spotted one last control, glowing red. The symbol looked dangerous, like a warning. It could shut the machine down or it could blow it up faster. Carter hesitated for a single breath. Then he slammed his hand down on the cymbal. For a heartbeat, everything went silent. Then the light from the core exploded outward, a blinding flash that lit up the entire desert. Marcus thought they were all dead, but then the glow faded. The machine was dark. The hum was gone. Carter collapsed to his knees, breathing hard. He had done it. But there was no time to celebrate. The surviving KLYTH screamed in fury and charged. "Fall back!" Marcus ordered. The 301st pulled Carter to his feet and began retreating up the ridge, firing as they went. The desert turned into chaos again. Tracer rounds streaked through the night, alien blasts scorched the sand, and smoke filled the air. Sergeant Willis was hit in the shoulder but kept shooting, covering the others until the last man was over the ridge. Then Marcus grabbed him and dragged him behind cover. Finally, the remaining KLYTH stopped their advance. Without their warlord, and with the machine destroyed, they began to withdraw. One by one, they faded into the darkness, leaving only silence behind. The soldiers lay on the ground, exhausted. Some were crying, some laughing. Carter was shaking so hard he could barely hold his rifle. "You did it," Marcus said, kneeling beside him. "You saved us all." Carter gave a weak grin. "I just pushed buttons until it worked." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "You pushed the right ones." Hours later, just before dawn, a transmission came through on the radio. "This is Central Command," the voice said. 301 ST, you are ordered to hold your position and await arrest. You are charged with disobeying direct orders and engaging the enemy without authorization. The camp went quiet. Sergeant Willis swore under his breath. "After all this, they want to throw us in chains." Marcus stood up slowly. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with anger. "We saved 1,000,000 lives tonight," Marcus said. "If they want to arrest us for that, they can come and try." The camera lingers on Marcus's face as the sun rises over the desert. The 301st stands together, tired but unbroken, staring into the light. Cliffhanger, the sound of helicopters grows louder in the distance. Reinforcements, or a firing squad. The screen cuts to black. The sun rose blood red over the desert as the helicopters landed. Dust swirled around the 301st as heavily armed military police stepped out. Their faces were cold, their rifles ready. Captain Marcus Hayes, the lead officer, barked, "You and your regiment are under arrest for disobeying direct orders and engaging the enemy without authorization. Lay down your weapons." Marcus stood tall, his uniform dirty and torn, his face streaked with sweat and blood. "Go ahead," he said quietly, "arrest us." One by one, the soldiers of the 301st dropped their rifles to the sand. They were handcuffed and loaded into transports. Not one man resisted. 3 days later, the trial began. The room was packed with high-ranking officers, reporters, and government officials. Cameras hovered in the air, broadcasting the trial across the country. Marcus and his men stood in chains, lined up like criminals. The prosecutor listed their crimes, leaving their post, engaging an enemy force without permission, destroying an alien asset that could have been valuable for research. Every word made Marcus's jaw tighten. He kept his eyes forward. When it was his turn to speak, Marcus stepped to the center of the courtroom. "We didn't disobey orders to be heroes," he said, his voice steady. "We acted because if we hadn't, that weapon would have wiped out millions of American lives. We chose to fight because no one else was there to do it." He paused, looking at the cameras. "We were sent out here because we were expendable. But we are not expendable. Not to each other, and not to this country." The courtroom was silent. Outside, the nation was watching. News feeds showed images of the battle-scarred 301st, standing proud despite the chains. People on the streets began to speak out. "Those soldiers saved us," one woman said to a reporter. "And this is how we repay them." Within hours, protests erupted in cities across America. Crowds gathered outside the courthouse, holding signs, "Free the 301st," and "Heroes, not criminals." Social media exploded with footage from the battle site, leaked by a soldier's helmet cam. The country saw the truth: the aliens, the machine, the fight that saved millions. By the time the trial reached its final day, the nation was no longer silent. When the verdict was read, the courtroom was packed to the doors. "All charges against the 301st are hereby dismissed," the judge announced. "This court recognizes their actions as acts of extraordinary bravery and service to the United States." The room erupted in cheers. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, and the soldiers of the 301st were finally unchained. Marcus turned to his men. "You did it," he said simply. Carter grinned, tears in his eyes. "No, sir. We did it." Weeks later, Washington, D.C. held a ceremony on the National Mall. A statue had been built, a bronze figure of Captain Marcus Hayes standing tall with his rifle, surrounded by the soldiers of the 301st, looking out toward the horizon. The President of the United States stepped up to the podium. "Tonight," she said, her voice ringing clear, "we honor the men who saved our nation. They were sent to be forgotten, but instead they became legends." The crowd roared. Marcus stood quietly, his hat in his hands. He didn't smile, but his eyes shone with pride. Beside him, Carter looked up at the statue and whispered, "We really shook them, didn't we?" Marcus nodded. "We shook more than them, son. We shook the whole nation." As the ceremony ended, the camera pans up to the statue, the bronze faces of the regiment forever watching over the city they saved. The narrator's voice closes the story. They were sent on a mission no one expected them to survive. Instead, they became the soldiers who reminded a nation what courage looks like. They were the 301st, the regiment whose bravery shook a nation. Fade to black.